All right, my friends, I've got a fun one for you this week. On this week's podcast, we're going to be covering various health and wellness trends. And these are trends and treatments that you may have heard of, and you wondered, would a real doctor give this a thumbs up or a thumbs down? So, we're going to talk all about these types of treatments, including infrared saunas, coffee enemas. Okay, so on this podcast today, we're going to really dispel whether these treatments get a thumbs up or thumbs down. And some of these are very controversial treatments, like coffee enemas, like colonics. Some of them maybe not as controversial, but maybe you haven't heard of, like grounding or earthing. And I'll be joined by my guest, Dr. Jolene Brighten. Dr. Brighten is an internationally renowned hormone expert, nutrition scientist, and founder of Dr. Brighten Essentials, a supplement company creating science backed solutions for women's health. Board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, a certified menopause specialist and sex counselor, she's the best selling author of Beyond the Pill and Is This Normal? Empowering women to optimize their hormones and enhance sexual wellness. A passionate advocate for uncovering the root causes of hormonal imbalances, Dr. Brighten inspires women worldwide to reclaim their vitality through her clinical expertise, speaking engagements, and educational platforms. She is the host of the Dr. Jolene Brighten Show, which is a very popular podcast all about alternative and holistic women's health. And we'll be talking about how these types of kind of trendy wellness treatments and therapies are actually good or bad for people in general and for women in specifically. So let me start with my podcast interview with Dr. Jolene Brighten. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jolene.
I am super excited for this conversation.
So this is going to be a fun one. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast for a long time, you have heard Jolene. Dr. Jolene Brighten has been on my podcast many times before, but it has been quite a while. So I want to welcome you back. But for those who haven't heard you on the podcast before, I'd love to have you introduce yourself. Tell us how you got to where you are today. You are a naturopathic endocrinologist, which I would venture a guess that most people have no idea what that means when I say naturopathic endocrinologist. What is that, and how did you get to where you are today?
Totally. So I'm a board certified hormone doctor with the integrative approach, like truly integrative, where yes, we use medications and sometimes we use medications with lifestyle and diet, but we always look at the foundations of how we can empower the patient to heal themselves. Because let's face it, healing doesn't happen at the doctor's office. It happens day to day in their life. And so that's essentially what I do. My background started in chemistry and nutritional biochemistry. So I'm very much about the food as medicine approach, but make no mistake, like medicine is medicine to people. So really how I ended up on this journey is being a really sick kid, having a lot of digestive issues, having a lot of hormonal problems. And it was really through figuring out my own health that I came to discover my passion for women's medicine and for hormones. And it is something that I had an epiphany while in medical school that women's medicine is always done to them, not with them. And I really wanted to change the paradigm. And that's a lot of my mission. It's part of why I started the Dr. Brighten Show, is that we are changing women's medicine for the better, one conversation at a time. And I love my work.
So you are a naturopathic doctor. Can you explain what the difference between a naturopathic doctor and an allopathic doctor or osteopathic doctor is?
Yeah. So, our training is really similar in terms of the basic sciences. When we approach, so a pathology, we diagnose somebody. A lot of times, and you're in the conventional paradigm, so you can speak a lot more to this, but a lot of times the approach is like, do we have a medication? Do we have a surgery? Or maybe we just refer to a dietitian. Whereas my training is to look at what can we be integrating and bringing all in? So what can we help nutrition wise? And I will leverage dietitians in that I am directing, like, this is where I want things to go. We want to look at what is happening in your lifestyle. What led you to this place? So we spend a lot more time really trying to analyze, how did we get here and where are we going to end up if we don't intervene, and looking at, do we need a medication? Do we need a surgical referral? What other testing and interventions do we need? But always trying to empower the patient through nutrition and lifestyle for them to understand that they do have a lot of control over their health and their day-to-day decisions.
One of the first times I heard the term root cause medicine or getting to the root cause was in some of our early discussions when we met each other, I don't know, like maybe 10 years ago or something. Can you describe what that means when you are a doctor who's helping patients to try to get to the root cause of what their medical issues are?
Gosh, I think a great example I can use to illustrate this is endometriosis. So I also have endometriosis. And a lot of times women are past hormonal birth control. I was given hormonal birth control for heavy, just obnoxiously painful periods. And nobody actually asked, what's the cause of this? What's the root cause? What's down there? It was medication to suppress symptoms. And then fast forward to secondary infertility, and lo and behold, I have stage 4 endometriosis. So really looking at the root causes. If you come in with period pain, I want to understand why. Do we have elevated prostaglandins? And can we maybe fix that pretty quickly with omega-3 fatty acids and magnesium? Or do we have an underlying issue like fibroids, adenomyosis, or maybe endometriosis? And then as we look at the root cause, then we want to go deeper of like, well, what can be done about that? What is driving something like that? So with endometriosis, there is a hormonal imbalance often taking place, but also because these endometrial tissue can also make their own hormones. Uh, there's that. And then there's inflammation. So we have to start looking at those layers and really peeling it back. And why I find that I'm best suited for this type of medicine is because I will never stop asking why at nauseum. I'm the type of doctor who will lay in bed at night and not fall asleep because I just have to know why and what is going on with this patient. So the root cause is always about, yes, we want to get you out of pain, right? We want symptom management, but we always want to go deeper and understand what is driving those symptoms.
So I've always wanted to do a podcast like this where we talk about various kind of trendy health and wellness treatments and activities that people are doing. But I had to bring the right person on, somebody who actually knows about all of these. Because I think there are a lot of doctors who may know a few things about a handful of these, but very few doctors who really have their finger on the pulse of pretty much knowing about all of these types of treatments today. And you, I thought, would be the perfect person. You've got the podcast that Dr. Jolene Brighten Show, where you cover all these topics and a whole lot more. So that's why I brought you in today. So we're going to be talking all about thumbs up or thumbs down on various holistic and wellness treatments. And the first one I'd like to bring up is something that is super popular. People have been talking about this for the last year or two. People are putting cold plunge tubs in their backyards, on their patios. What do you, Dr. Jolene Brighten, think about cold plunging? First of all, what are some of the I guess, claims that people are making about it? And do you give cold plunging a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Okay, so when it comes to cold plunging, if you are pregnant, early postpartum, or on your period currently, it's a thumbs down. And that's because it can make cramping worse. We don't mess with babies, okay? We don't want to be causing any extra stress on the body. And early postpartum, if you look at Chinese medicine, they always talk about keeping the body warm. We definitely want to do that. But if you are anywhere else in your menstrual cycle or in your lifetime, I give it a thumbs up. And that is because people who claim it helps your mitochondria, they are in fact right. So it induces mitochondrial biogenesis, which is the process in which the body makes more mitochondria. And if you're a woman, listen up, because your ovaries are one of the most concentrated tissues with mitochondria. So this could potentially have benefit for both fertility and hormonal health.
All right. So a thumbs up from Dr. Brighten most of the time for cold plunging, but not for everybody. How about steam saunas and infrared saunas? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up. Yes. So if you look at a lot of the research, so primarily the cardiovascular research has been done on men. However, this is one thing that we can look at, and we believe we can apply it to women as well. So people who are regularly using a sauna, so at least like 4 times a week, they have improvement in cardiometabolic health, and we see a decrease in cardiovascular events. You can go back and you can look at basically all of the Nordic countries who use saunas regularly. They have great health outcomes. A lot of people claim this is a great way to detox, and they're not wrong. In fact, on the podcast, I had Dr. Brihan Crawford, who's a Chinese medicine doctor. We talked all about saunas, the importance of sweating, and the Chinese medicine take on all of this. It does help with detoxing. It can help with your immune system, and it can help eliminate zombie cells, which are cells that are basically just being little metabolic greedy cells. we can get rid of those and we can improve the overall health of our body.
So she mentioned zombie cells. Another term for zombie cells are senescent cells. And the way you describe it is, each of your cells, they divide, as they get older, they divide into more cells. And at some point, every time they divide, they lose a portion of the chromosome, of the telomere. And so the chromosome gets shorter and shorter. And at some point, it gets to the point where they can no longer divide. And those essentially are cells that are in your body that are unable to divide anymore. And these are the senescent cells. And there is a belief that the more of these senescent, quote unquote, zombie cells that you get, the more your body is aging. And so trying to get rid of them or even convert them to ones that are once again dividing again is a big part of overall anti-aging. So you mentioned, we talk about saunas in general. What are your thoughts between steam saunas and infrared saunas? Do infrared saunas, do you believe, give you a leg up over the steam saunas?
I believe they do. I mean, when we look at red light therapy, we know it can help with mitochondrial function. And so having the near infrared light therapy is also, well, the saunas, we're talking about that. It's also more tolerable for a lot of people. So I love steam saunas, but they can feel overwhelming for people. And so with the light therapy saunas, we find that a lot more people can tolerate them.
Yeah, and we're actually right now planning to get a combination red light and infrared sauna in my house. It's hopefully going to be on its way soon. And by the time this podcast airs, we'll have had it. And definitely I'll share it on my podcast here, what I think about it and some of my thoughts too. But I would agree with you. I would give saunas a thumbs up. Otherwise, I wouldn't be paying to have one come into my house. And I'll share my experience with that.
I have
How
one
about
too. You're going to love it.
Oh, good, good. So is yours infrared?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yep,
All
and it's
right.
got like the music that plays and everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, okay, and I, as a surgeon, it's like, okay, I'm all about getting things done. So it's like, okay, I'm going to sauna. And while I'm sauna, I'm going to meditate. So I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. And yeah, so we'll see. Or I'll be in there like saunaing and like stretching, or who knows, we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
How about coffee enemas? Are coffee enemas a thumbs up or thumbs down from Dr. Jolene Brighten?
That's a big thumbs down for me. So I know this is going to get a lot of hate, but this is all the claims around it are largely anecdotal. Now, listen, if we get a study, I'm open to changing my mind. But what people claim is that it's going to boost your glutathione. And, people also use it to help with bowel movements. I would say a better bet is if you want to boost your glutathione, you can take supplements like N-acetylcysteine, or you can eat sulfur rich vegetables like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and eat selenium rich foods, which fish is an excellent source of selenium. And if you're eating your cold water fish, you get a lot of omega 3s as well. If you're someone who needs healthy bowel movements and you're like, I need to do a coffee enema for that, really a best place to start is drinking plenty of water, making sure you're getting hydrated. You're increasing your fiber. And I tend to tell people increase your fiber by about 5 grams daily each week. So if you're like not eating fiber, aim for 5 grams a day. And after a week, then it's 10 grams a day. That way you don't get GI distress. But we want to be aiming more for like 25 to 35 grams of fiber and then moving your body. And yeah, 10,000 steps, walking for 30 minutes. You can do 10 minutes 3 times a day, weightlifting, whatever it is for you, moving your body can help with bowel movements as well. If you're leaning on an enema to have a bowel movement and nothing's working, you need to meet with a gastroenterologist.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. This was not on our list, but what are your thoughts? I know some people are saying, hey, they're recommending, even some of our colleagues are recommending colonics as a way to get rid of parasites. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Thumbs down. I think colonics have a time and a place, but not everybody has parasites. We have this huge trend on parasites. I actually covered that on the podcast as well, where everybody and their mother and their brother are saying like parasites are your problem, whatever your symptoms are. And we just know that that's not true. We can test for parasites. So it's called an O&P times 3. That's where you're looking for the organism and its eggs. So you do 3 different stool collections. It can be hard to catch parasites. However, I think, we see these trends come up and we have to be really cautious. Colonics can disrupt the flora of your microbiome in your gut. So those little bugs, they need a happy balance, and they're doing a lot for your hormones, for the tissue that is there for producing vitamins as well. So we don't want to be disrupting them. They're largely involved in your immune system health as well. So when it comes to colonics, certainly a time and a place. Like you might want to have a colonic, so before you have your colonoscopy. Like, great, like that might be necessary. However, I want people to understand that you can overdo things like that. It can have a negative impact. And, there have been rare cases where like perforation happens. That's an emergency, life threatening condition. So we just want to be cautious. And when it comes to parasites, test, don't guess is a saying that you'll hear among a lot of naturopathic physicians and functional medicine providers. And that is because we don't want to just be chasing things down. These medications, too, that treat parasites, as you know, they're really, really intense. And even if you're using the natural herbs, like, you're using black walnut, for example, and berberine, these can be disruptive to the microbiome as well. So we don't want to just be stumbling around blindly chasing parasites, because you could delay diagnosis for something else and it could leave you feeling really bad for a very long time, like longer than you should be.
Hmm. Yeah, I know I've seen some people on social media where they're undergoing a colonic and then they show the tube of what's coming out of them. Like, look, there's a parasite right there. There's a parasite right there. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like, how do you know that that's a parasite? And I think they just see something that looks long, like as if it's a tapeworm or a roundworm that's in their gut, and they think that it's coming out. And so I found that I was like, that's really interesting. So I actually talked with a couple of nurses who've worked in endo, where basically they do colonoscopies. And you would think that if you do thousands of colonoscopies, and you've got the scope right there, you're sticking the tube up somebody's butt, that if you truly have parasites, then you're going to see these tapeworms actually inside the gut lining. And the nurse that I've talked to, they said, look, they've seen thousands of these, have never seen an actual parasite.
Mucus looks a lot like a parasite. And I think a lot of people mistake mucus, because there are cells that produce that in the intestine. I think a lot of people mistake it for that. And I have had several patients bring their poop to me in Tupperware containers because they believe they have parasites. And as it turns out, it's just mucus. And so I think that, again, if you think that's what it is, then test it. Test it so you know for sure.
Okay, so thumbs down to coffee enemas and colonics. What about morning sunlight? There is a trend towards people going out in the morning, getting sun in their eyes. Is that a thumbs up or thumbs down?
That's a thumbs down. Oh, excuse me,
Thumbs.
thumbs up.
Oh, I was about to
Do you see
say.
my thumb? Come on, brain. That's a thumbs up. Oh, yeah, I got tricked with you saying thumbs down. So it's a thumbs up. Morning sunlight is a thumbs up. This is because you are going to expose yourself to the light. It is going to break down your melatonin and is going to trigger your cortisol to rise, as it should. Cortisol should be highest in the morning, and then it should decline in the evening. It always opposes melatonin. And so morning sunlight is a really easy way to start setting your circadian rhythm. Plus, I love the idea of people getting outside, doing like some deep breathing, or just enjoying that sunshine and just taking a few minutes to just bask in the amazingness that is like living on this planet as a human. So when it comes to hormones, morning sunlight is one of the simplest hacks to improve your cortisol levels and get better sleep at night.
So, as we're talking, Jolene is actually in Mexico right now. So, it's very nice for her to say that, because it's probably 80 degrees where you're at, I'm assuming.
It's actually 42 right now. So I'm in Mexico City in the mountains. I still go outside. Like my nanny actually thinks I'm crazy because I still open up the whole house first thing in the morning. And she's like, it's freezing. I'm like, it's good for you. Trust me.
So I'm in Michigan and it is 10 degrees outside with a bunch of snow everywhere. So it's a little bit different. But all right. So thumbs up to the morning sunlight. How about grounding or earthing? Thumbs up or thumbs down? If you can explain what that is first for those people who may not have heard of that. And then would you give it a thumbs up or down?
Totally. This is a great practice. I have recommended it my entire career. So, grounding in the purest sense is just getting barefoot on the earth. Not so much the cement and concrete, but like really getting in the grass and on the earth. And this has always been a practice that when people do this, they feel their nervous system regulates, they feel more regulated in their body. Now we see that there are grounding pads, and I also own BAHE is a company that I bought grounding shoes through. And it might be placebo, but I feel like on my travel days when I'm walking through airports, I do feel more regulated. So but in its purest sense, it's getting out on the earth. And when people say touch grass, it's literally touching grass. So with that, I give it a big thumbs up, and that is because it's a really simple way to help regulate your nervous system. The idea behind it is just dissipating energy and connecting to the earth's own energy. A great So you were like, oh, I'm a surgeon, I like to like two for one, I like do multiple things. Get your morning sunlight, ground, and you meditate. You can do walking meditations, you can do standing meditation, or you can just sit right on the earth and meditate.
And there is a belief that some people have, and I don't know how proven it is, that you can actually get electrons that are going from the ground into your body. And when you're talking about, if you've listened to my podcast before, you've read my book, Younger for Life, you know that one of the main causes of aging is oxidation or free radicals. And free radicals basically are these damaging molecules that can damage the DNA of our cells, and they are actually neutralized by getting electrons donated to them, typically by antioxidants. And so there is a belief that you can actually get electrons that are going into your body through grounding, through earthing on the ground, and that may also have a true anti-aging effect. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's any science to show that. It does kind of make sense, I guess, when you think about it. But even more, I think, so than that is just what you said. Is some of that could be psychological, just that kind of calming sensation that you get when you're actually in contact with the ground. And so, unless you've got some type of a parasite in the soil underneath your feet, it probably is a good.
Or, if they just sprayed Roundup all over the
Oh,
grass,
that's probably not so great either.
yeah, and that's where I think the grounding shoes or maybe the grounding pads can be an alternative. But I want people to also understand that when it comes to decreasing stress and blood pressure regulation, there have been studies showing that if you just put plants in your workspace or in your house, that can help. There are people who literally hug trees. They're tree huggers. That's another alternative where you can ground in that way. But even like the simplest thing of filling your house with plants can really help with your stress levels as well. And so if you're feeling stressed about the fact that where you live, you're like, I don't know about stepping in that soil or stepping on the ground and the park is dirty. Alternatively, you can bring plants into your house to start getting some of those benefits too.
That's a great idea. All right. How about castor oil packs? Castor oil, super popular. Some people may talk about castor oil by putting it on their eyelashes or on their skin or in their hair, which it's filled with antioxidants. It's a very a healthy oil in general. But what about actual packs of castor oil that people put, let's say, over their liver, over their abdomen?
Thumbs up from me. I actually wrote about this in Beyond the Pill, and I've recommended castor oil packs for a very long time. This actually comes out of naturopathic medicine, and my mentors had taught this to me. So castor oil packs helps with circulation. I'm going to tell everybody right now. When I was taught this in school, and they were like, "You have to saturate this thing, and then you have to put this pad over you, and you have to lay there, and all this." I'm very impatient. And so I will literally massage it into my belly, for like 10 minutes. I will throw a hot water bottle over it. For everybody listening, we don't use hot water bottles more than like 20 minutes because that can cause circulatory issues and undo the effects that you're trying to get. And, I would just do that and I would jump in a shower, or I would just rub it on at night and go to bed with it on. And it still seems to work. So helping circulation over the liver, that can be beneficial for supporting detox pathways. Over your uterus can be really helpful if you are somebody who is planning on trying to get pregnant, for increasing circulation there, or You have pelvic congestion syndrome, which I talked about with Dr. Ana Sierra on my podcast, who's a brilliant expert in her field. The other thing, though, that you have to know is that if you're having a really heavy period, you don't want to use a castor oil pack at that time because it could potentially increase the bleeding. It's not true for everybody, but we just don't want to take a risk because heavy periods are a fast track way to anemia, and iron deficiency anemia means that you are not getting enough oxygen to your vital organs. So we always want to be cautious with that.
So essentially, for those people who haven't done a castor oil pack, it looks like a heating pad, but you pour the castor oil into it, and it's not occlusive, meaning that that castor oil gradually seeps through it onto your skin. Is that correct? I've never done one before, so
So you soak the cloth. Yeah, okay, let's talk about the traditional way because I just gave everybody like the quick and dirty mom way of doing things. So you soak the pad, and then the pad you put over. You guys can't see me right now. Your liver, if you're in your body right now, go to the right hand side and just like beneath your lower part of your ribs, that's where your liver is. You're going to place that cloth that you've saturated there. You can buy packs, or you can buy like organic flannel that's like not dyed in any way and just cut off a piece of that and use that as a pack. And then, I usually tell people just wear a shirt that you don't care that it gets ruined and put that on. Or you can put like a towel over it, but the towel will get ruined. And then you put the hot water bottle over that. And then you want to relax for 10 to 20 minutes with it.
okay. So it's not that you actually pour the castor oil into it; it's actually the hot water that you put over it. The that I see when people are wearing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. See, I even learned something on this podcast. There you go. I'm so glad that I'm actually in it because I learned something today. All right, here's another one that I do not know much about, I admit, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether vaginal steaming is a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
This one is so controversial. So, I will give it a thumbs down if you're using it under the premise that you can cure endometriosis or cure fibroids or anything like that, cure infertility. There's a lot of people out there selling vaginal steaming kits telling you that if you just do this, you'll never have endometriosis. Endometriosis, as one example here, it can be anywhere in your body. It can be seated anywhere in your body. They found it in the brain, the eye, the shoulder, the diaphragm, not just in the pelvis. So this certainly isn't going to cure it. And so it's certainly not going to cure fibroids, adenomyosis, a lot of these issues. It's a thumbs up, however, if you just want to relax and pamper your vulva. And if people are like, what is vaginal steaming? So, vaginal steaming, they have used it in some Asian cultures, some African cultures. So, it historically has been used in many cultures to support women's health. It is where you fill a basin. A lot of times there's ones you can fit over your toilet seat. You fill a basin with hot water and sometimes herbs. So things like calendula, which is really soothing to the tissue, comfrey. Sometimes people, will want to use things like peppermint because it does have that kind of like cooling, tingling effect. There's big concern where people are like, "Oh, that's going to disrupt the flora of your vagina." If anyone knows how a vagina works, all that tissue folds in on itself. I highly doubt people are getting
Mhm.
steam to enter all the way into their vagina. So
I mean, yeah, you
that
think it's more of a vulvar steaming than it is a vaginal steaming?
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
because you're sitting over it. And as you sit, that's going to get the vulva, the perineum, which is the space between the vulva and the anus. So with that, I'm not worried about the antimicrobial properties of these herbs. It's also just like not enough in a lot of cases to be antimicrobial in that way, right? Like I wouldn't say like, oh, just use that instead of like an antibiotic. Now, the thing that is a concern is that you could have a steam burn. I think to dismiss this cultural practice just because you might have a steam burn is to basically say women are too dumb to understand that they could have a steam burn. Like there is harm reduction practices. So I always tell people if you want to do this, put your wrist over the steam. And if it's too hot for your wrist, it's too hot for your vulva and just wait for it to cool and then you can have a seat. If you get too hot while you're on there, because some people will wrap a whole blanket around themselves or a towel to trap the steam so their whole body is getting steam. If you're too hot, then open up the towel or get off of it. Like individualize it for you and use common sense. I think people are really, really smart, and we don't have to act like this is the most dangerous thing in the world, especially when you're culturally competent enough to understand that this has historical and cultural implications in people's lives. And so we don't want to throw all of that, all of the whole practice out just because we're worried about a steam burn. We want to advise people on how to do this safely.
I think anytime you've got, a good large amount of water that has steam coming out of it and you're putting it close to your skin, you just have to be exceedingly careful because, I mean, obviously, if it spills a bit, that you could get burned from it. So, is this something where people are just kind of creating their own, um, I guess, bowl? They just do it themselves, or are there actual like commercially available vaginal steaming kits that may be safer than you just taking a bowl and then putting hot water there underneath your vulva?
Well, so there's actually entire spas that are dedicated to this, where they have chairs that have like an open ring in them that you sit over, and so yeah, so you could do a bowl of steam that way. There are kits on Amazon and a lot of places, and like I said, you can fit something into your toilet, and so. I actually use this. I was always like, whatever, vaginal steaming, that just seems like extra work. After my second was born, I had a tear and it hurt terribly. And I had a granuloma, and my immune system, in part because I have autoimmune disease, was very angry about these sutures there. And nothing was getting me relief. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try this vaginal steaming, which is really vulvar steaming. And I was like, it just sounds like it might be relaxing. And it was so soothing. It was just hot water that I used. I didn't use anything else. And it was really soothing, and it really helped ease the pain. And it was that moment that I was like, okay, you guys are on to
You get
something here.
it. Now, has your husband Bryce ever tried scrotal steaming?
He has not. You know what? You want to know something really interesting about Bryce is that his grandfather was the first medical doctor to start a hydrotherapy clinic in the United States. And so his family has been doing cold plunges, saunas, but also always ending their showers in cold. Whenever my mother-in-law comes to the house, she's in her 70s now. She's been doing this since she was a child, and she ends her showers in cold, which we know helps stimulate brown fat. It helps with the mitochondrial health. But I'll always hear her in the shower being like, "Woo!" It
I don't know.
cracks me up.
I don't know that I can do that. I know I've heard that too, and yeah, that's tough. The hot stuff I can deal with. It's the
Yeah.
cold. Yeah, and I've
Not
done
when
some
it's
cold
10
plunging
degrees.
myself, but yeah. The cold,
Yeah.
it's tough. Okay, so we covered vaginal steaming. This next one I think is really interesting because I understand it, but I feel like it just seems like such a minor thing that how can it make such a big change in people's bodies? And that is seed cycling. So, can you explain what seed cycling is to those people who may not be aware of it, and whether you think that it's a thumbs up or thumbs down?
You know what's crazy is I get credited all the time as like the inventor of seed cycling because I've talked about it so much. So my mentor who taught it to me, he actually published a book like 40 years ago that included seed cycling in it. And so it's kind of, I always tell people like, no, it was not me. I was taught this by my mentors, but many of the seed cycling companies that are out there are like, I first read it in your book. I first heard you talking about it. So I am going to give it a thumbs up. I do love seed cycling. I've been practicing it for over 12 years now myself. So seed cycling is the practice of eating certain seeds in line with your cycle. So we've got the follicular phase. That is the first day that your period starts, and that ends with ovulation. Once you ovulate, you flip into the luteal phase, and that extends until you start your next period. So, with seed cycling, we're going to eat pumpkin seeds and fresh ground flax seeds if possible. They're fresh. If not, don't worry about it. They'll still raise sex hormone binding globulin. So, we eat that 1 to 2 tablespoons of each during the follicular phase. This is going to give you zinc, which is going to support testosterone. It also has important essential fatty acids in it. And we have the flax seeds, which help raise a protein called sex hormone binding globulin, which helps grab on to estrogen so that you don't have too much of it circulating around. Once you flip over into the luteal phase, that's where we're going to eat sunflower seeds and sesame seeds, and we want to grind those sesame seeds. What's really interesting is that we had a lot of anecdotal evidence around this. We've seen people's skin get better, so acne clearing while they're doing this. I had one PCOS patient. I mean, this one always sticks with me because I'm like, this is just a good practice because it makes you aware of your cycle and you're eating nutrients that support you at that phase of your cycle. And we know nuts and seeds are economical and super healthy. But this PCOS patient came into me. She's already strength training. Her diet's looking really good. And I was like, listen, we're going to run some labs. I don't want to do anything that's going to interfere with them too much. Her goal was to get pregnant. But I was like, let's start some seed cycling. Let's add that to it. And we talked about stress reduction practices as well. Her labs come in. I don't hear from her. She ghosts me. I finally get a hold of her and she's like, I got pregnant. After years of trying, I got pregnant. And she said it was the seed cycling. I'm still like, I don't know about that. I don't know. But there are so many women out there telling these stories that whenever you have enough women saying the same thing, it's worth paying attention to. We have had one study come out on PCOS in recent years and seed cycling. Well, not seed cycling specifically, but eating these particular seeds and showing that it is beneficial for PCOS. There's another study that came out showing that it can help with PMS. And we know that like 90% of women have experienced PMS at some point in their life. And for all intents and purposes, medicine really doesn't have much. We like often women are just being given the birth control pill, which comes with its own side effects. So if women can do something as simple as just eating these seeds throughout their cycle and get positive changes, why not try that? Now, a little tip for people, because again, I'm like super lazy and I don't like time consuming things. I will grind up my seeds like a week worth at a time and I just stick them in the freezer and then I just scoop out of there what I need and I will put it on salads, in smoothies. I will top it actually on all kinds of things. Sometimes, it's granola, sometimes it's just a bunch of fresh berries that I mix seeds in with. And so you don't have to be grinding this every day or overthinking it. You can just prep it all on a Sunday and be good to go.
How much of the seeds do you need to eat if you're seed cycling then?
Yeah, so 1 to 2 tablespoons of each. So
Per
like if
day?
you're, yes, each day.
Per day.
So we're eating 1 to 2. And, in that way, like people are getting more fiber, more nutrients, more, those essential fatty acids coming in as well. And so I love it because it's also just like a bump to your nutrition.
Well, good. So seed cycling is a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about seed cycling, um, because I know you have some information. Could they go to your website and then maybe search it, or where could they get information on seed cycling if somebody's heard this the first time and they're like, oh, that sounds interesting?
I have a YouTube video on it if you prefer to watch videos. I have a couple of articles on it. So I have one specifically for just hormones in general. So if you're still cycling, and then I have another that's about being in perimenopause and menopause and how that actually would work.
Okay, great. All right, so seed cycling gets a thumbs up from Dr. Brighten. How about intermittent fasting? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Okay, so based on the research, it's a thumbs up. But the way that men are doing it and then women are trying to apply it to themselves, that's a thumbs down. So with intermittent fasting, it's kind of funny because people, when this became all the rage, people were like, oh, that's just a fancy word for an eating disorder. And I'm like, hold up, hold up, hold up. Intermittent fasting is actually one of the, secrets to how I help people resolve small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO. So intermittent fasting, here's what most people can do is a 12-hour fast. Close your kitchen at 6 p.m. and don't eat again until 6 a.m. That allows the migrating motor complex, which is really like a street sweeper of your intestines, is the nervous system going to move everything through, to get its 4 cycles at night. We want that. So with SIBO, we got very good bacteria, but they're in your small intestine. We need to push them down. So this is really beneficial to give the intestines some time off while you're sleeping. I am a big fan. If you can, if you've got blood sugar dysregulation issues, you have severe chronic stress going on, you might not be able to do it. You might be someone, so like in Beyond the Pill, I put a recipe in there for drinking turmeric tea at night, but adding like a little bit of butter or coconut oil, adding some collagen in there to help sustain your blood sugar through the night. So if you need that, that doesn't mean that like you're a failure at intermittent fasting. You just what your body needs. Now, where it gets problematic is when we look at these studies of men who are doing extreme fasts. Maybe they're only eating in an 8-hour window in the day. And then, it's a lot of these biohacker men who are like, this is what you do. Ladies, it works for men, it works for you. That's not true. We cannot take the research on intermittent fasting for men and apply it to women. The reason is because if you're born with ovaries, then your entire biological system is set up to be very sensitive to the environment because you are the one who will get pregnant, you will carry a baby, and then you will have to feed that baby. And if you send inputs of stress, which intermittent fasting is, right? There's good stress and there's bad stress, but if it's too extreme, those inputs can cause you to lose your period. You stop ovulating and you stop menstruating. Now we've got a problem. We can also see that a lot of women start having increase in PMS. They're having more mood issues. Like it can affect their hormones in a negative way. If you are going to intermittent fast and you're like, well, I do just want to eat in like a shorter window or do a longer fast, never in your luteal phase. Why? One, I will say that if you are trying to conceive or you're sexually active and you're not using protection and you could potentially be pregnant, we never want to be limiting our nutrient intake or our caloric intake during the luteal phase. Luteal phase, remember everybody, ovulate, then we're in our luteal phase. The other thing that happens is that by the time you're 5 days post ovulation, your progesterone is rising. As progesterone rises, we get more hungry. We actually need more calories. There's been interesting research, some of which is done on athletes, showing a 5% increase in caloric intake is necessary during the luteal phase. So we don't want to restrict that. And you're going to be more likely to want to binge eat and also feel like a failure because you're like, why do I have such cravings? Because as estrogen takes a backseat to progesterone, serotonin comes down as well. We're going to want chocolate. We're going to want carbs. We're going to want sweets. That's going to help with serotonin. But dopamine is also coming down as well. So we're out reward seeking, trying to get a dopamine hit. And a lot of people do that via food. Now, one more point I want to make about the luteal phase is that insulin sensitivity can decline during that phase just slightly, but enough so that glucose is around and circulating for a potential baby. Your body's really smart like this. But with that, if you're restricting food, the hunger signals are going to be even more intense. This is not a part of the menstrual cycle where you want to be fasting. Most ideal is usually about day 6 of your menstrual cycle, so 6 days after your period to, right before ovulation. A lot of people find they need less calories anyways during that time because estrogen is up so much and we've got serotonin and dopamine right where it should be because it always follows estrogen.
So intermittent fasting really just depends. Yeah, it's important for men and women to realize that you have to for it to be most beneficial and even potentially not harmful, you want to make sure that you do it based off of your own body, not just off of what somebody tells you is the way that everybody should do it.
Oh, I was just going to say, if it feels confusing, I have multiple articles on drbrighten.com. So there's intermittent fasting for women, which is if you're still cycling. Then I talk about intermittent fasting for menopause, because that's a very different conversation when your hormones are more closely matched to your male counterparts because you're no longer cycling. So there are those resources, and I have like tables and graphics and all kinds of stuff to make it digestible and lots of citations so you can see where this information is coming from.
And we'll put a link to Dr. Brighten's website on the podcast caption here too. So take a peek at it. Tell us also, before we finish here, I think we've covered so many cool things. Certain ones that I think are my favorites, like infrared sauna. I'm hoping because we're getting one coming in. I'm also a fan of intermittent fasting. I do that for myself, but I do understand that how I intermittent fast can be very different for women. My wife, when she does intermittent fasting, is very different, and she realized that when she does the same way I did it, it didn't benefit her all that much. So, and then there are things that I think we both agree, not a big fan of, with coffee enemas and things like that. So tell us a bit about your podcast, because I know this is your big thing recently. I think, the second or third guest on it, which was a definite honor for me. People who are listening to this podcast, if you're looking for another podcast to listen to, what can they find when they tune into the Dr. Jolene Brighten Show?
So we are very focused on women's health. I am bringing in experts from all over the world in their own field to really help people understand what is happening in their body. I insist on actionable steps. As you know, you were a guest. Like, we've got to give people, if people are going to give us their time, we've got to give people things they can implement immediately to start feeling better right away. And we really help you get to that root cause and understand how to talk to your doctor. We have had just really fantastic guests who have not held anything back. And, you were on there, you shared so many great skin tips with people. We've gotten great feedback on that. We have had other providers who have helped people navigate the parasite conversation, like I said, interstitial cystitis. I have a neuropelviologist expert. She is the only woman certified in her field, talking all about chronic pelvic pain. That one's just a delight. We cover things from perimenopause, menopause, to fertility, endometriosis, adenomyosis, general period problems, and then, the things that happen behind the closed doors in the bedroom that not always everyone wants to talk about, but everybody needs information on. So the show is just packed with actionable tips. And my aim is, I just want to help people live a better life, but also advocate for themselves, because women's medicine needs to change. And it's really the patients who are going to help drive that change.
So Dr. Jolene Brighten is my guest today. She has her website, drbrighten.com. She's got her podcast, the Dr. Jolene Brighten podcast. So I definitely encourage you to check it out. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation.
Yeah, this was great. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you've been enjoying this podcast, if you could leave a rating or review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, it definitely helps me spread the word. And every week we'll give a quick shout out to somebody who does. So thank you so much for listening. And as always, I leave you with the reminder to always eat real food, use clean skincare, and auto-juvenate before you operate. I'll see you next week, everybody.